Welcome back to the channel. This will be the predicted lineups for Game Week 7, and you can see my scoreline predictions on screen as well. This forms a triple upload for FPL today, with a team selection in the morning, the best wildcard squad, and I also did a triple upload on Monday for UCL Fantasy. In terms of the scorelines though, I've gone for Bournemouth 1, Fulham 0 on Friday night, Leeds 1, Tottenham Hotspur 2, Arsenal 3, West Ham 0, Manchester United 1, Sunderland 1, Chelsea 2, Liverpool 2, Aston Villa 3, Burnley 2, Everton 2, Crystal Palace 1, Newcastle 2, Nottingham Forest 0, Wolves 2, Brighton 3, and Brentford 1, Man City 3. I'll be going live tomorrow for yet another deadline stream, the final one before the international break, and I'll give 10 memberships to the viewers. And on Saturday, there'll be a reaction stream. And after that, a little break from content. And once I return, it's full throttle for UCL Fantasy and FPL content. Be sure not to miss it by liking this video, subscribing to my channel, and also hitting that notification bell so you're always up to date on my content, both FPL and UCL Fantasy. Check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, fair likes to my videos, priority applied to comments, amongst many other perks. My Discord server, the FPL League, and Spotify can also be found in the description. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. After a 2-0 win against Olympiacos in the Champions League, I believe they'll line up with David Raya in goal, who was terrific once again, making some spectacular saves to keep that Arsenal clean sheet. During Timber got a rest, he came on as a substitute towards the end of the game, but Ben White got the nod, and it's something I was talking about as a possibility for the Champions League and also against West Ham. I just had that feeling that Timber and Calafiori could be rested, and both of them got that sort of rest against Olympiacos. I think both of them will start with Lewis Skelly back on the bench, and Gabriel picked up a knock, but Arteta said he should be fine. He felt something towards the beginning of the game and they didn't want to take any risks. William Saliba will likely partner Gabriel once more with Zubimendi, Odegaard and Rice, with Eze, Saka and Gyökeres up front. And Saka scored the second goal, but he was given a rest as well and came on towards the end of the game. And I think Eze and Odegaard starting together might not happen, because in recent matches Eze has played as a midfielder, so it's something I could revisit in my final predicted lineup for tomorrow's stream, and we could see one of Trossard or Martinelli start on the left wing with Eze instead of Odegaard. But the Norwegian was man of the match against Olympiacos. He was terrific in that game, and I have to say he has been very impressive recently. He came on in a brief cameo against Newcastle and changed the complexion of the match. He was finding pockets also of incisive passes and creating some big chances. So I think Martin Odegaard is getting back to his best with assists in the last two games against Olympiacos and Newcastle. After West Ham at home this weekend, it's Fulham away, Crystal Palace at home and Burnley away, so Arsenal won't leave London up until Game Week 10, and that's where someone like Saka or Gyökeres could be considered for the triple captaincy in the first half of the season. And Arsenal are top of the FDR, the fixture difficulty rating, until Game Week 11, and this fixture swing comes at a good time for the Gunners. The score that you see in the top right hand corner of your screen is how many I've gotten correct in terms of my predicted lineups, and with Arsenal it's 59 out of 66 so far this season. With Aston Villa, we'll see how they line up on Thursday night, so this video is recorded before the Europa League and Europa Conference League games. I've gone for Emi Martinez in goal and not Marco Bizot, with Cash and Dean as the fullbacks, and Maatsen is also knocking on the door, and Mings was subbed off due to injury in Game Week 6 against Fulham, and Pau Torres came on and he really helped with their ball progression. He also played very well in Europe against Bologna in match day 1 of the Europa League. Ezri Konsa should complete that defensive line with Camara and McGinn in central midfield, but Bogard is also a possibility. Buendia was a game-changing cameo in the second half. He also set a record for the quickest time to record a goal and assist as a substitute. Rodgers, Harvey Elliott and Ollie Watkins, who is finally off the mark, and of course he is not in my FPL team. After Burnley at home, there is a poor fixture swing for Aston Villa after the international break, starting with Tottenham away, then it's Man City at home and Liverpool away. But if you do have the likes of Konsa and Watkins, the advice is certainly to keep them for one more week. Next up though, we're going to Bournemouth with 59 out of 66 correct with those predictions. I think they're going to go for a similar setup to how they did against Leeds in their 2-2 draw, with Petrovic in goal, Jimenez and Truffert as the fullbacks, Diakite and Senesi, who is fantasy gold right now, and he certainly deserves that 4.9 million price tag, with Adams and Christie in the midfield, and then Adley, Semenyo, Kluivert and Ivanoson, we could still see Brooks get back into the 11 and then Semenyo gets pushed to the right-hand side again because he can play both flanks very well, as discussed in my wildcard squad. Fulham at home next, then it's Crystal Palace away, Forest at home, and Man City away. So I think Bournemouth have decent fixtures still, and it's not too late to invest in Senesi and Semenyo, who are two of the best players in their respective positions. Moving on to the next team with Brentford, they should remain with the same formation as the last match, a 4-2-3-1, because they were shifting to a back five against the likes of Chelsea and other matches, and it wasn't quite working in terms of the results. But Keller in goal, Coyote and potentially Aaron Hickey, a 4 million defender, to start once again, with Collins and Vandenberg in that defence, Henderson and Yarmoliuk in the midfield, Dango Ouattara and Sharda as the wingers, and Damsgaard just behind Igor Thiago, who scored a brace against Man United in the early kickoff last Saturday. It is Man City at home next, followed by West Ham away, Liverpool at home, and Crystal Palace away. So the fixtures still aren't quite there yet, but I still think West Ham away could be quite promising. With Nuno Espirito Santo, though, maybe the appeal will be slightly reduced. And with Brentford, I think it's probably worth waiting a few more game weeks before fully investing in these players. I think Igor Thiago could be a decent option as your third forward and maybe your eighth attacker to rotate with other options. And you will get DEFCON potential from Collins and Vandenberg. But apart from that, I'd probably stay clear from these Brentford assets. With Brighton, Verbruggen in goal, Kadioglu and Veltman as the fullbacks is likely, but you've also got De Kuyper and Vifa who can knock on the door, and De Kuyper scored in that 3-1 victory against Chelsea, so don't be surprised to see the Belgian start at left back. With Duncan Van Heck in central defence, Beleba and Ayari is a solid midfield partnership. Minta and Matoma on the wings is quite nailed on at this stage of the season. Jorginho Rota as the attacking midfielder, and Danny Welbeck, who scored a brace against Chelsea, should be rewarded with a start. But Diego Gomez was also decent in the last couple of matches, and he scored 4 goals in his last Carabao Cup match, so he is also another possible starter. But I think he'll drop to the bench for Danny Welbeck, and Jorginho Rota will be in that number 10 position. Now, is there a possibility that Rota is on the bench instead and we see Gomez with Welbeck? I think that isn't something we should discount, and it was a similar partnership we saw in the Carabao Cup. It's Wolves away next, followed by Newcastle home, Man United away, and Leeds at home. But after getting their predicted lineup spot on last week with 11 out of 11, that has taken my tally to a very decent number overall with Brighton. I was struggling at the beginning of the season with them, but it can certainly swing one way or the other. Only one team is letting me down in terms of my predictions. I think with the rest, I'm averaging 90%, but with Wolves, they're kind of bringing that average total to 88%, which is still very high for most of these clubs. The next team is Burnley, with a 5-4-1 being probable again. Dubravka in goal, Walker, Lauren, Esteve, Ekdal and Hartman, Chuana, Cullen, Florentino Luis and Jadon Anthony, who is attracting a lot of FPL interest. He costs 5.7 million now, and he scored at the Etihad in that 5-1 defeat. Lau Foster up front. It's Aston Villa away next, which doesn't look pretty, followed by Leeds at home, Wolves away, and Arsenal at home. So it's not too great with that Arsenal fixture, but I think these Burnley players could be possible starters in your FPL teams against Leeds and Wolves. So I think the likes of Esteve, who scored 2 own goals against Man City, Dubravka, and also Jadon Anthony could be quite appealing. And if you have a lot of injuries or suspensions, these players could fill in and do a very good job for you. But Jadon Anthony is definitely the most appealing asset by some distance, and Dubravka is the template pick because he costs 4 million and he's a long-term solution as your backup goalkeeper. Moving on now to Chelsea, who have had a very mixed set of fortunes recently, but that win against Benfica was crucial. They won 1-0, courtesy of an own goal by Richard Rios. Robert Sanchez should start in goal at 4.9 million, with Reece James and Cucurella as the fullbacks, but Gusto is always going to be a threat to Reece James and his minutes. I've gone for Achimpong and Badiashile, who played very well against Benfica, but they've also got Hato, who is a left-back and centre-back by trade, so he could get another start alongside Badiashile, with Chalobah suspended, and also the likes of Fofana, who could also enter the mix, by the way. He's another possible starter, but of course Levi Colwill is the big absence for Chelsea. I've gone for Lavia and Caicedo in the midfield, with Gittins and Neto on the wings, and Enzo Fernandez just behind Joao Pedro, but we also saw Chelsea play Enzo in a deeper position against Benfica, and then Buonanotte as the number 10. He's been getting plenty of starts recently across all competitions. It's Liverpool next. Both teams are missing key players, as you'll see very soon. You've also got Nottingham Forest away after the international break, Sunderland at home, and Tottenham away. But I think Chelsea have good fixtures after Liverpool, and that's where João Pedro could still be an FPL hold quite comfortably. Enzo Fernandez is very appealing, especially in the absence of Palmer, and if he returns after the international break, Cole Palmer will certainly enter our thoughts once more, and Caicedo is still a DEFCON machine. He didn't score those points against Brighton, his former club, but I think he'll almost certainly do so against Liverpool. And defensively, I'd probably avoid Chelsea right now. I think Cucurella is arguably a sell, and at the same price point, you can go to Gabriel or Virgil van Dijk, for example. But overall, Chelsea still have some promising assets in FPL terms in a couple of weeks' time. We've also got Crystal Palace, who have been very solid this season. I got 10 out of 11 correct last week, but it's still 64 for the season out of a possible 66, with Dean Henderson in goal, Richards, Lacroix and Gay. Wharton and Kamada is the likely midfield partnership, but you've also got Hughes as another possible starter, Munoz and Mitchell as the wing-backs, Ismail Assar, Yeremy Pino and Mateta is the first choice front three, and sometimes they can also play Kamada a bit further forward, give one of Sarr or Yeremy Pino a rest, and more likely it would be Yeremy Pino, and then Hughes would start in the midfield. Now their starting 11 is up there with the best in the Premier League, but they've got a few decent options on the bench, but maybe not enough to compete for a European spot, for example, in the long run. But if they can keep their players fit, I think Crystal Palace are one of the very best teams to watch, and they've been very consistent so far this season. The only unbeaten team left in the Premier League. They face Everton away next. They do struggle a lot against the Toffees, hence my prediction at the beginning of this video. Bournemouth at home, Arsenal away, and Brentford at home, but they are relatively fixture-proof. They beat Liverpool, of course, at the death through Eddie Nketiah, and they have multiple great FPL assets. I think Mitchell is still decent, but you could see a rotation from time to time with Borna Sosa. The likes of Gay, Richards, Lacroix, Munoz, take your pick from them. Dean Henderson is decent between the sticks. He made some good saves against Liverpool as well. But my favourite is Ismail Assar at this moment in time. A massive differential. He only cost 6.4 million. And we can't forget Mateta, who cost 7.6. He's one of the most reliable options up front. It's not a great start to the season for him. He missed some big chances against Liverpool, but the goals will surely come very soon. And I think both of them are solid choices in the attacking line. We're now going to go to Everton, who face Crystal Palace this week, with Pickford in goal, O'Brien, Tarkowski, Keane, and Mikalenko as the likely defensive line, with Idrissa Gana Gueye and Garner in the midfield. Dewsbury Hall is suspended after picking up his 5th yellow card of the season, so I believe Ndiaye and Grealish will remain on the wings, and Alcaraz will be a like-for-like replacement, and a lot of Toffees fans also feel the same way. Beto up front is also not a certainty, because we could see Tierno Barry get the nod against Crystal Palace, and after the international break, it's Man City away, Tottenham at home, and Sunderland away, so their fixtures remain quite mixed. With Fulham, I've gone for Leno, Castagna, Anderson, Bassi, and Sessegnon, with Sandenberg and Lukic in the midfield, Harry Wilson and Iwobi on the wings, and Josh King just behind Traore, who played as the number 9, with Jimenez picking up an injury after scoring against Aston Villa, and Rodrigo Muniz was ruled out before the game. And I think going into Bournemouth, let's keep an eye out on what Marco Silva says. If one of Jimenez or Muniz is fit, they will definitely start up front. They seriously need those players, because Traore, for all his pace and physicality, he doesn't have the finishing, and Fulham desperately need that sort of hold-up play and goal scorer up front to make the difference against Bournemouth, Arsenal and Newcastle. And then they face Wolves at home, which looks much better on paper, but Fulham have been solid this season, and they're certainly a handful, but they would be quite disappointed to be 1-0 up against Aston Villa and then lose 3-1 to another bogey team of theirs. With Leeds United, I've gone for Darlow in goal and an unchanged 11, Bogle, Rodon, Struijk and Goodmanson, with Ampadu, Longstaff and Stack, Aronson and Okafor as the wingers, with Calvert-Lewin up front, and Leeds are near the top of the FDR, facing Tottenham at home, Burnley away, West Ham at home, and Brighton away. And it's another team I've gotten very good predictions so far this season, with 61 correct out of 66, so I'm fairly happy with that. Long may it continue. And Liverpool will have several changes inevitably. Ekitike is essentially ruled out against Chelsea. We'll see what Arne Slot says on Friday, and Alisson has been ruled out already, so they will go for the backup goalkeeper from Georgia, who was discussed in my Euros content last summer. Frimpong, Konate, Van Dijk and Kirkes in that defensive line is the most likely, with Gravenberch and Szoboszlai in the midfield. Salah, Wirtz, Gakpo and Isak is the best front line they have on paper, but we have seen them sometimes play Szoboszlai as the 10 and then McAllister a little bit deeper, with Wirtz on the left or on the bench, so we could still see one of Gakpo or Wirtz benched this week, The same goes for Frimpong, but this is my current predicted 11 for the Premier League champions, who have had a very poor week. They lost 1-0 to Galatasaray, picked up 2 injuries there. They also lost against Crystal Palace, and now they have maybe a few doubts. Some poor performances from early in the season are catching up to them, but they still have so much quality. Once it clicks, they'll still be the favourites for the Premier League title, and their fixtures are still okay after Chelsea away. With Man United at home, that will be quite easy if Ruben Amorim is still there. Brentford away, and Aston Villa at home as well. With Manchester City, I've gone for Donnarumma, Mateus Nunes, Ruben Dias, Gvardiol, Anne O'Reilly. Nico Gonzalez will likely start in the midfield, with Savio on the right, Doku on the left. He's showing very impressive form right now, and that's why he costs 6.6 million. Reinders has also gone up in price so many times this season, and at one point he went down, but then afterwards he got a big return against Arsenal, and he increased in price by 0.2 million again. And Phil Foden is my favourite Man City option against Brentford, alongside the obvious Erling Haaland. He has 7 goals in 7 games against Brentford. That includes a hat-trick at the GTEC Community Stadium. He is the only Man City player in their history to score in that stadium. Erling Haaland hasn't done that so far in his career, just the 1 assist in that particular ground, and he will lead the line up front after another brace against Monaco and a player of the match performance. He is a legendary asset in UCL Fantasy and FPL already at such a young age, and City's fixtures aren't particularly great, facing Brentford away, Everton at home, Aston Villa away, and Bournemouth at home over the next 4 game weeks. On the other side of Manchester, we have United, with Bayern in goal, Euro, De Ligt and Shaw in that defensive line. But I wasn't aware of this in my previous Predicted Lineups podcast, but there was kind of like a falling out or argument between Euro and Fernandes, and then we saw Euro dropped, which did seem quite surprising at the time. So honestly, it's not a huge shock if Euro was on the bench again and Maguire started in that defensive line. Ugarte and Fernandes will be in the midfield, with Dalot and Dorgu as the wing backs if Amorim persists with his 3-4-3 formation. Mbeumo, Cunha and Sesko up front against Sunderland at home. This is do or die for Manchester United, and if they don't get the positive result and all 3 points, we could see another managerial change throughout the international break. Afterwards, they face their fierce rivals Liverpool away from home, followed by Brighton at home and Nottingham Forest away. So it's not looking particularly great for Man United still. On Newcastle's side, we've got Pope in goal. Trippier will replace the injured Livramento, who will likely miss the next 6 to 8 weeks worth of action. So I think Trippier could be considered in FPL terms for the next 2 or 3 months, with Burn as the left back potentially, but there is also the possibility of Hall playing in that position. He's just not ready to play the 90 minutes yet. Botman and Chow is looking quite solid for Newcastle in recent matches. We saw that against Arsenal up until the last few minutes, and also against Union Saint-Gilloise in a 4-0 win, which is mightily impressive in the Champions League. Sandro Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes and Joelinton is one of the best midfields you can find throughout the Premier League. Jacob Murphy on the right. Anthony Gordon scored 2 penalties in the Champions League in midweek, and Voltemade scored once again, just like he did against Arsenal. He is looking very impressive so far for the team. It's Nottingham Forest at home this week. I think Newcastle can win big by 2 or 3 goals. Then it's Brighton away, Fulham at home and West Ham away. So the fixtures are decent. I think one defender or Pope is viable in FPL terms, and my favourite attacker is Nick Voltemade at 7.1 million. With Nottingham Forest though, I think it's probably a good time to sell these assets. Murillo could be available, and maybe he'll displace Morata in central defence, with Sells in goal, Nico Williams and Zinchenko as the fullbacks, and of course Milenkovic will start. Nicolas Dominguez is back alongside Anderson, and we could see a change in that forward line. Igor Jesus could take Chris Wood's spot as the number 9 there, and a lot depends of course on the lineup on Thursday night, so this is subject to change, and just find out what I ultimately go for in my predicted lineup tomorrow during that deadline stream. In Doy on the left, we've also got Bakwa on the right and Gibbs White as the attacking midfielder. Nottingham Forest are winless on the Ange Postecoglou before their Europa League game. We'll see how they get on Thursday night. But we are approaching the end of this podcast in terms of the teams covered. Sunderland are next with Roofs in goal. He has been one of the best goalkeepers so far this season and a great signing for Sunderland, just like Granit Xhaka, who could still play in that midfield on the right-hand side this time. And we have seen a slight change in formation for Sunderland after the injury to Diarra. Bahum and Masuaku as the fullbacks, Mukiele and Alderete in central defence. Reindolo Mandava is still suspended until the 25th of October, so he will return against Chelsea away in a couple of weeks' time. Siddiqui and Xhaka in the midfield, Rig as the attacking midfielder, and then Talbi and Lefay as the wingers, and Isidore up front. He now costs 5.6 million, but the standout Sunderland asset would be Alderete with a massive return against Nottingham Forest in that 1-0 victory, scoring the winning goal, getting DEFCON as well. I still like Mukiele, and you can't go wrong with a Sunderland defender. Xhaka is a decent fifth midfielder at only 5 million. And to be honest, if you want a cheap striker, Isidore is still decent as well. With Tottenham Hotspur, I've gone for Vicario in goal, and despite the benching against Wolves on Saturday night, I think Pedro Porro will start. He also got the assist for Van de Ven in that 2-2 draw against Bodo Glimt, and Romero was left out of the Champions League squad, but if he's available, he will start against Leeds away. Van de Ven and Udogie would also form part of that defensive line, but Jed Spence has been getting a lot of game time this season. Joao Paulinho, Bentancur and Bergvall is also possible, but Spurs can play different formations like a 4-2-3-1 and 4-3-3, but I expect them to go for Kudus and Xavi Simons, who were rested against Bodo Glimt. They didn't start that game, and Richarlison up front is still the main option until Solanke and Kolomuani are fully fit and available. With West Ham, there's Areola, Walker-Peters, Mavropanos, Kilman and Diouf, who is my favourite West Ham defender with plenty of assists so far this season. Magassa and Matheus Fernandes in the midfield, Bowen and Somerville on the wings, and Lucas Paqueta just behind Fulkrug, who hasn't been going so far this season, but some people ask me, could he be the new Chris Wood under Nuno Espirito Santo? Stylistically and profile-wise, there is certainly a few similarities there, but my favourite option overall, even over Diouf, who would be a close second, is Jarrod Bowen. He costs 7.7 million. He is so consistent for West Ham, fixture-proof, and he's got 9 bonus points so far this season. And the last team is the one I've done the worst in Wolves. They have changed formations multiple times, from a 3-4-3 to a 3-5-2, but now they are quite settled with this 4-2-3-1 formation, and it all started with that 2-0 win against Everton in the Carabao Cup, with Johnston in goal, Doughty and Bueno as the fullbacks, and that's Hugo Bueno, by the way, because Santiago Bueno will partner Krejci in central defence. Joao Gomez and Andre will be in the midfield, Arias and Hwang Hee-chan on the wings, and Menetzi just behind Strand Larsen. And Wolves are near the top of the FDR up until Gameweek 12, facing Brighton at home, Sunderland away, Burnley at home, and Fulham away. I think Strand Larsen could be worth a punt, and Johnston has been looking quite solid recently, but I think from an FPL perspective, it's still a wait and see. They earned a 1-1 draw against Tottenham, and they were quite unlucky to lose it in the dying embers of that game through Joao Paulinho's equaliser, but Wolves have built a solid foundation now with this formation change, which started against Everton in the Carabao Cup. So they've got something to build on with some decent players in several positions. Krejci has been a good signing so far. He's been scoring goals and playing in the midfield as well, but naturally he is a left centre-back. Strand Larsen will get plenty of goals for them. So with this fixture swing, they need to get some results on board and finally some Premier League points. It started against Tottenham Hotspur with that draw, but now they need some victories against the likes of Sunderland and Burnley over the next 3 game weeks, and then by that stage there could be much more confidence in Wolves. Stay tuned for tomorrow's deadline stream, where I'll be locking in my final predictions for these lineups. The same goes for my FPL and FPL challenge squads. I'll be answering hundreds of your questions, showing you the best captaincy options, predicted lineups, also team news, injury updates from Friday's press conferences. That will all be taken into account, and also the Thursday matches from the Conference League and Europa League as well. There is also going to be even more things like the clean sheet odds to give you the full package and an ultimate guide for Fantasy Premier League. Drop a like on this video, subscribe to my channel, and also hit the notification bell so you're always up to date on my content, both FPL and UCL Fantasy, which I'll cover until the end of the season. We're closing in on 37,000 subscribers, and let's get this video to over 100 likes. Follow me on X, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, and check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the Championships, furlacks to my videos, amongst many other perks. My Discord server, the FPL League and Spotify can also be found in the description. I'll see you tomorrow for the next deadline stream, and on Saturday I'll be doing the final piece of content before the international break, and after I take a little bit of a rest, I'll be at full throttle with FPL and UCL Fantasy videos.